What's up, Joe? What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Sports 360. I'm Jeff Fennell, and I'm here with Rob Duran of Rob Duran Sports. Rob, it's been a long time, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Glad to be back. Excited. How's everything going with you?
Okay. It's going. It's going better than okay. It's just been such a long time, man. I think the last time we spoke and we did a podcast, I think a gallon of milk was like 62 cents or something like that. A loaf of bread was 25 cents. You know what I mean? You can get on the bus for a quarter.
Man, times
Um,
have changed.
yeah,
Yeah.
times have changed, man. It's just been a long time, but it's good to be on the mic with you again and to talk a little sports, man, because it's been a good minute. But yeah, life is good. Down here in Charlotte, spring is, you could see it in the air. You could feel it in the air. You see the plants blooming, and the weather is, the temperatures are nice, and so looking forward to that. And of course, something we're going to talk about today. When you talk about spring, you got to talk about baseball, and the
Oh
major league
yeah.
season is starting on Thursday, and I know you're excited about that.
Yes, man. I cannot wait. Should be a holiday if you ask me, but that's a different conversation.
You really think opening day should be a holiday?
Absolutely. I think we should have opening week. I know they focus on opening day. I think it should be opening week, Jeff.
Opening week. And how would that work? Opening week. Like, because okay, you do have an opening day where it's the first game for the home team, at home, right? And the first opening day is just, it's the first game for everybody. But then you have what I call like a second opening day where,
Hmm.
if the team starts on the road for 6 games and then goes home the following week, they now have an opening day, 7 games or so into the season. So I can see how, you have sort of like the larger opening day and then the secondary opening days. But what are you talking about opening week? How would that work?
I mean, I'll compromise and say we should get both of those days off. The opening quote unquote opening day one and opening day two. I'll compromise and have those 2 days as holidays. I think it's only fair for the fans, Jeff. We got to grow the game.
And you're going to grow the game by having those two
Everyone
days
stay
be.
home. Yeah, watch the games all day. Baseball marathons.
Now, opening day is baseball marathon. I don't know what the networks have in store for Thursday, but traditionally, it pretty much has been
Yeah,
baseball all day long on opening day, televised baseball.
yeah, and let me tell you, I'll be at work obviously, um, but if you don't think I'm going to sneak away a little bit, catch my Yankees playing. I'm not sure exactly what time they open up on Thursday, but I'll be there. I'll be watching the game.
And I was about to ask you, you'll be at work. It's interesting you said that. I'll be at work. You didn't say anything about working.
Yeah,
You just said you'll be there.
I'll be there.
You'll be on location.
Yeah. I got my wireless earbuds ready to roll, man. Ready to
Okay.
go.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about opening day and also going to get your annual predictions for the season. And interested always to hear about that. But before turning to baseball, I want to touch on a few other things. I want to talk about, well, I was about to say my New York Knicks, but I also understand you're a New York Knicks fan as well. So talk about our Knicksies, who, look, they're in the fifth spot right now. They played a whole lot better than I think anybody had any reason to expect, even the diehard Knicks fans. But the last week or so hasn't been too good, and I think they need to right the ship. I think they're playing Houston tonight. They need to beat the Rockets. They need to right the ship. But what do you think about the Knicks, man? And they look to be a shoe in for the playoffs, but I just want them to stay in that top six and not fall into the playing round.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Overall, I think the season has been really good for the Knicks. I think the addition of Jalen Brunson was magnificent for them. It was perfect. He's a perfect fit for the team. Julius Randle has been playing really well, especially considering the up and down season he had last year. He's been playing really well this year. I would love to see more from RJ Barrett, honestly, more consistency from him. I understand he's still young though, and I hope that he continues to develop. But they have a good core. I like what the Knicks have shown this year. Obviously, they're on a three-game losing streak now. They've kind of stumbled a little bit after giving us a lot of excitement, especially towards the end of the season now. So I'm hoping that this game against the Rockets, they turn around, they win in a very convincing manner, and kind of get that confidence going up again. Because, like you said, I don't want them dropping. I don't even want them dropping to six. I want them to stay at that number five spot right there. Um, and let's see what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. I will say this. I think when you talk about the Knicks and the additions that they've made, I also think the midseason acquisition of Josh Hart has been a
Yes.
big one for them. He brings a lot of those intangibles. He rebounds the ball, plays some defense, scores. He can score a little bit, but overall, he's just a really good addition. And you see him on the floor late in games instead of RJ Barrett a lot of times.
Yeah.
Um, but you mentioned Randall, and look, I think Julius has had a bounce back season. I do think there have been some signs of him being the old Julius Randle, though. You know what I mean? The bonehead turnovers,
Hmm.
forcing the issue at the end of the game where you can tell he just, is not going to give up the ball. You can just tell, right? He's not looking, his eyes are not up, his head is not up. He's dribbling the ball, dribbling in traffic, throwing the ball out of bounds. And then even the other game against Orlando when he got mad at the referees and then was taking it out on his teammates and yelling at them too. You kind of get a little bit of the good and bad Randall. I think for the most part he's been very good, but I think with some of his success has come a little bit of, I don't know, maybe excess confidence or pride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I just think he needs to make sure he stays within the overall structure of the team because I don't believe that at crunch time, I'm not saying Julius Randle shouldn't get the shot. I just don't know if the ball should be in his hands, right? I'd rather be in Brunson's hands and maybe Brunson makes a play to get Randle a shot. But I don't like the idea of Randle thinking the ball has to be in his hands because he's not a good decision maker.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that I was excited about when they signed Brunson is that we no longer have to see Randall coming up the court with the ball. Because a lot of those decisions and the turnovers and stuff like that, him, like you said, pretty much dribbling with his head down, that was one of the biggest issues he had last season. And now that he has a guy in Brunson who obviously can bring the ball up the court, but also create his own shots and create shots for others, I think as a cohesive unit, Randall has to kind of see that and say, all right, let me take even if it's half a step back and let Jalen Brunson create this opportunity for me, or kind of take it into his own hands. But I think you're right. Maybe it's the pressure of New York and the playoffs, and we saw him shrink a little bit when he went against the Hawks a couple of years ago in the playoffs. So maybe that's starting to kind of come up again and he's trying to kind of prove himself. But I think you're right. He has to kind of take that step back and let Jalen Brunson do what he does best and create the opportunities for all the other guys.
Yeah. And I think this Knicks team is so much better than that
Hmm.
version that played the Hawks in the playoffs. And because I think if any team tried to employ the Hawks strategy of like where they pretty much said we're going to shut Julius down because they rightly believe nobody else could score on that team. I think that would hurt them this time around because I think, first of all, Brunson can score. Barrett's a better scorer than he was,
Yeah.
a few years ago. Quickly is really emerging as a player as well. And then I think again you can get some contribution from Hart. But you know what? I do have a concern about the Knicks starting five in this regard. I don't believe they get enough from Mitchell Robinson or Quentin Grimes. For me, Quentin Grimes, if you're a starter and you're scoring 2 points as a shooting guard, and especially a guy like him who's supposed to be able to shoot from long range, that's not good because you know you can't play 3-on-5 with your starters, because Mitchell Robinson, there's some nights where I'm wondering, like, how is he still on the floor? Because it's like he's so uninvolved in the game. How does he even keep his head in the game? And so I think, you know, those 2 positions bother me some because I think they need more consistency from both of those positions because I think the Knicks are a good team, but I don't think they're good enough to not be functioning at full, sort of like firing on all points.
Yeah, I was just about to mention too, Grimes. I would love to see more offensive contribution from him, and he has the minutes. He's playing 25 plus minutes a night, and he can shoot. He's a good shooter, and it's just a matter of him actually taking the shots and making them consistently at this point with him. And with Robinson too, it would be nice to see some more offense in his game. I would say he's a great defender. Not taking that, maybe one of the better defenders at his position in the league. But I think it would open up the floor so much more too if he was able to contribute a little bit more offensively. Because then you have the Grimes and the Barretts wide open, probably in the corners. Once you get Mitchell the ball down low.
Yeah, I just think the Knicks, like all NBA teams these days, are taking far too many threes.
Yeah,
Every team, man, is just shooting an incredible number of 3-point shots, but that's today's NBA. Another NBA point, John Morant. He just recently come back from a suspension for a whole host of issues that were culminated by, his IG live post where he was in the club with what appeared to be a gun in his hand. Got the 8-game suspension, was away for a little bit longer. Um, he's back now, and I'm glad he's back. But I would tell you this, Rob. I think anybody who was watching him and watching what was going on around him and the stories that were coming out, he kind of saw something like this coming. He was not on a good path. And I think one can only hope that he has gotten the help that he needs in order to make the changes that he needs to make. Um, and I think the jury's out on that. I'm glad he's back, but that young man needs to get himself together, you know what I mean? And address some of these issues that had him making some of the decisions that he was making because um you know e- everyone's watching him now, including
yeah,
the NBA. They're watching him closely, and if he doesn't tighten up the ship, we could see his career go sideways in a hurry.
yeah. And listen, man, he's a young kid. He's 23. So there is time for making up his image, creating a better image moving forward. But it's a matter of him wanting to do it and surrounding himself with people who are going to empower that and help him out. And I hope that maybe some veterans around the league have kind of put their arm around him and said, listen, young fella, this is not the way. We get the success, the money, all that comes with being an NBA star, especially him, who's one of the more dynamic and athletic stars, one of the more box office stars we have in the league. But he needs to surround himself with people who are going to help him make good decisions and be consistent with that. Tell him, like, the crowd you're hanging around, these people, this stuff you're doing, no, none of that, man. Like, focus on the game in front of you, man, and stay on that good path to not create a bad situation for yourself again. So I hope he does get the help and does surround himself with good people, because I would hate to see his career get cut short in his early 20s when it's such a great talent to see.
Yeah. And one other thing I will say is, and I think his dad needs to step out of the limelight. I
Yep.
think, when you know a player's father as much as we know T. Morant, something's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to know a player's parent as much as and see them as much as we know and see T. Morant. Can
Yeah.
you
It
think of
creates a
another
lot of
player where you know their parent?
just LeVar Ball, and he kind of
Well, there
disappeared
you
once his
go.
guys made the league. Yeah,
But
and
as you
that
said,
that
I
was an
think you were
issue in
saying, but
itself.
he kinda took a step back though, right?
Exactly. I think LeVar Ball was more, let me wait till my kids get into the league and then I'll back out. I'll back out from this one.
Mhm. Yeah, because he was wearing out his welcome
Yeah.
with all of his shenanigans. Um, but, he rightly has taken a step back since his sons have entered the league. But yeah, but other than that, I mean, I don't think parents of these NBA players should be having such a high profile. And I think when they do, especially when he's sitting courtside and he seems to always have a drink in his hand, everything
Yeah.
else, like it's just not in sunglasses inside the stadium and stuff. It's just not to me. It's just not a good look all the way around. And maybe I sound like an old prude or something. I don't know. But I look at this as a business, and I just think that the NBA is watching this and saying, "This thing goes off the rails. We will shut it down,"
Yep.
and that's my concern. So you can call me an old prude if you want, but if you want to safeguard your career and maximize your earnings in a small window of time that you have to do that, and to do that both on and off the court, then I think you got to conduct yourself in a way that shows that you have an understanding that you're part of a huge business enterprise.
Yeah. And I don't know how Adam Silver operates, but we're old enough to remember how David Stern operated with his guys around the league. He played
Yep,
no games when it came to
yep,
that.
that's right. So anyway, we'll see what happens with John Morant. Real quickly before turning to baseball, I want to touch on football and hit on one point really, and that is your Jets. Um, It seemed early on that they were in the running for, man, I'm blanking on his name, the quarterback who used to be with the Raiders.
Carr.
Yes, Derek Carr,
Yeah.
right? They were in the running for him, brought him in, loved him, you know what I mean? Talking about he's gonna go to the Hall of Fame if he plays for the Jets and all this stuff, but didn't make him an offer. So that was weird. He's now, in New Orleans, right? He's signed with New Orleans. And so now the Jets have turned their attention wholeheartedly to Aaron Rodgers. And it seems as if that's going to get done. So, what are your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers? I have my thoughts, but I don't want to influence one thing you're going to say. So I'm going to hold mine for right now. As a Jets fan, and coming off a really good season where the weakest link on their team was at the quarterback position. I think we can all agree.
Absolutely.
Um, so, what are your thoughts about the Jets potentially bringing on Aaron Rodgers?
I'll tell you what, Jeff. Unretire number 12. Give him a statue. If he brings us to the Super Bowl, I'm all in with Aaron Rodgers, man. He may be the weirdest guy on planet Earth, going into the darkness and all this other stuff he does. If he comes to New York, obviously he's coming. It's just a matter of when, not if at this point, I think. But when he arrives in New York, steps into MetLife Stadium, puts on that green Jets jersey, I am all in. And I can't wait. Listen, the Jets were, like you said, probably a quarterback away from being what I would say, and I'm not being a Jets homer here, maybe a contender other than the Chiefs, maybe, to get to the Super Bowl because I feel like their defense was that good. I think they lost a lot of games based on Zach Wilson and him not being able to make the plays or turning the ball over, whatever the case was. You give the Jets an average QB last year, and they can make a run at a Super Bowl. And we've seen it plenty of times with other teams who have great defenses, playmakers on offense, and just an okay quarterback. And I think with Aaron Rodgers, and I know he's not Aaron Rodgers from 10 years ago or anything like that, but I think he's still one of the better QBs in the league. He is 39. He had some injuries last season. I think whatever darkness retreat he did, maybe he got his mind right, his body right. I think he has a chip on his shoulder this year. Packers clearly do not want him, and they've said nothing short of saying it's been straight up. Yeah, if we keep Aaron Rodgers, then we did something wrong. So I'm all in, Jeff. Bring me Aaron Rodgers and bring me the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, look, I think that's the positive side of it. And I think he brings all of those things. I mean, he like you said, he's still a very, very good quarterback, even though he's showing some age with the injuries and so forth, what you would expect. Um, but clearly better than anyone the Jets had last year. And still you have to consider him among the best quarterbacks in the league. He's not the best anymore because he's
No,
just too old.
yeah,
Um, but he does come with some potential downsides, and part of it is, and you alluded to it with the darkness retreat and things of that sort, with the controversy. You know what I mean? He's a veteran. He's going to speak his mind. He's going to, take on the media and challenge the media and challenge fans' perceptions and things like that. But you remember him going, "Hey, I'm immunized," right? When they asked him about whether he had taken the COVID shot, and then he had to come clean and say, "Well, yeah, I didn't take the shot, but I took some Flintstone vitamins." You know what I mean? I'm immunized, right? um the darkness retreat. And see, here's the thing about it. I think there's certain things that play in other cities that don't play in New York. And I know Aaron Rodgers is a national figure, but his home base still was in Green Bay. And I think if he brings some of that little cynicism about him, that little snarkiness about him, and he's not playing well in New York. And the darkness retreat, the man bun, all this stuff. I mean, you're not in Kansas, Toto. You know what I mean? You can't. That's not going to play in New York. And so there's a part of me that says, I can see him being the guy who brings you to the Super Bowl. But I just wonder, though, if things don't go well, will he be more of a distraction than a help to the Jets' cause? Because I can clearly see him very easily becoming a distraction for that team.
yeah. I think if he struggles, especially right out the gate, there's gonna be a big dark cloud over MetLife Stadium with the Jets easily. Um, but I think if he comes out the gate and it kind of looks like what Brett Favre looked like when he came to the Jets, where they were looking like a team that was going to be unstoppable. And this is the kind of start Aaron Rodgers has, and it is consistent and continues throughout the season. I think we Jets fans are so desperate, Jeff, so desperate to see some type of run in the playoffs and towards the Super Bowl. And we feel like we have the team in place to do it. All that noise, I think we'll ignore it, to be honest. And I think the media might do the same, at least the Jets media directly. So the beat writer, all those guys, like I think those people will ignore the outside noise and focus on the Jets have something special going on
Yeah, if they're winning. I
if they're
mean,
winning.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that'll be easy to do, but we'll see. But it's worth keeping your eyes on. Obviously, you said it's just a matter of time when before he joins the Jets. And if that's true, then obviously the Jets are going to be one of the biggest stories of the NFL season for sure, at least at the start of the season, depending upon how they play. Um,
We're desperate, man. Desperate. Just bring me
yeah.
number 12.
Okay. I think he has to have a clause in his contract, though. He can't wear a man bun in New York. I think I think there has to be a clause. Um, Turning to baseball, before getting to your intrepid predictions, WBC, quick thoughts on that.
That was exciting, man. Especially towards the end. I tried to catch as many games as possible, but obviously time zone differences kind of threw everything off. I kept some games while I was at the gym and things like that. But overall, man, I really enjoyed the World Baseball Classic. Injuries obviously are part of the game, and a lot of people criticized it because of that. That's that's gonna happen whether it's spring training or whether it's a competition like this. But I thought baseball was put on the map in a very positive light thanks to the World Baseball Classic. And let me tell you, man, I can't wait for the next one. I truly, truly cannot wait for the next one. Just seeing even guys like Mike Trout who haven't experienced playoff success at the major league level, seeing his excitement throughout this tournament was golden for me. I loved every second of it, and I cannot wait for the next one.
Look, I think your sentiments are shared certainly by Major League Baseball, and perhaps some of their media partners. And look, I think the World Baseball Classic was, by all counts, very successful. A lot of excitement. Record viewership for the championship round or the championship game.
Hmm.
And so I think, all in all, it was a success, and people are excited about it. Personally, because for me, I just don't, I don't exhibition season, spring training, exhibition NBA, preseason football. I'm just not that guy. So, and I can understand for you, diehard baseball fan and other baseball fan, and maybe even some casual fans. This is really exciting. For me, just personally, man, I just can't get into it because I don't get into exhibition games. Yeah, I just don't. And so, World Baseball Classic is never going to be one of those things that are must see for me on any level. Just like preseason football or preseason basketball. And I get it that World Baseball Classic is different than those, just strictly, the preseason. I get it. I understand. But nah, I mean, I'm glad for those who enjoyed it. I'm not down on it just because Edwin Diaz or any other player got hurt, because as you say, that's just part of the game. That can happen at any time. Can happen in spring training, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't, right? So that doesn't phase me any. But yeah, man, I'm just gonna step out of the way and stand in the corner while everybody celebrates how great the World Baseball Classic is, and I'm just gonna, sip on my sweet tea.
I'll tell you what, man. Next baseball classic, we gotta go to a Dominican game, and your life will change. That's my dream for the next one. I'm trying to go to at least see one game with Team DR. Obviously, they fell short this year. Very disappointed in that. That was my squad. You and I, Jeff, we're gonna go see Team DR, and I hope to change your mind about the World Baseball Classic.
No, no, now let's be clear now. Now, the first World Baseball Classic, I was there. I went to Puerto
Nice.
Rico. I went to Puerto Rico. The Dominican team was there. The Venezuelan team was there. Trying to think. I don't think the Cuban team was there. I'm not sure. But you had those teams from Latin American countries, and man, you go into the stadium and it's a party. I've
It
never
is
been in a
different.
stadium like that.
Yeah.
And part of my job at that first World Baseball Classic, I had a clicker in my hands, right? And I was part of the contingent. We had someone from the union side, which was me. We had someone from MLB, and we were counting pitches, right?
Wow.
Because there were pitch limitations on, on the pitchers. And
Yeah.
so I just had a clicker, right? And like I'm going, but I'm watching. But the thing was, no, I get it. And I've always known this, how baseball is totally different, right? It's you're talking about the day off for opening day. Man, if this was in the Dominican or something like that, I mean, this is like party
The
time,
whole
right? This
the
is
whole month
celebration
off.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get it. And I know that when they got knocked out in this round so early, man, the country was reeling from that. So I do
Yeah.
understand that. But I'm just still saying, if it's one thing to be in the stadium, right? Because stadium experience is always different than
Yes.
televised experience. And especially for the World Baseball Classic, when you have Dominican playing Venezuela or Dominican playing Puerto Rico or whatever the case may be. But so I get that part. But I'm talking about as a viewer watching on television. Mm-mm, you ain't gonna find me, bro. Nope. We're gonna be playing hide and seek, bro. You ain't
Yeah,
gonna find me. So
man. Maybe it's just the baseball nerd in me, man.
no, but like I said, I think
But
there are a lot. Obviously, the diehards really
yeah,
love it, and I think casual fans have really taken to it as well. And I'm glad. I'm glad. I think it's good for the game. But you just gotta. I'm just being honest in terms of what piques my interest,
yeah,
and it's just not for me.
yeah. No, that's fair. I also watch spring training games. This year I didn't see as many, so I mean I don't blame you for feeling the way you do. But I'm just different, man.
I hear you. Yeah, and to prove you're different and how you and I both are different, you're about to now talk about something that I have never ever done in my life. I have never made season predictions on any league. I don't care. I don't even make season prediction on my teams. Like, you know what I mean? Like, much less going throughout the whole league. So, yeah, we're just, that's what makes the world good. You can't have just one flavor of ice cream, right? You got to have different
That's true.
flavors.
That's
So,
true.
yeah, so why don't we jump into that? Yeah, because again, I'm always curious as to your predictions for the coming season, and this year is no different. So, why don't we jump right into that? Where do you want to start in giving us your predictions for the 2023 Major League season?
Yeah, we'll start with the National League. Um,
Okay.
I'll give you the wild card teams first. To kind of we'll get those out the way. So I think for the National League, the wild card teams that I picked are the three wild cards: the Mets, the Dodgers, surprisingly the Dodgers, and the Phillies. Those are my three. So for the Mets, I think the Mets made a good decision in not re-signing DeGrom and going for Verlander. And this is just like business decision, not even looking at stats or anything like that. I think the return on investment you're going to get from Verlander through the life of his contract is going to be much better than what you're going to get for DeGrom over the 5 years he got with Texas. That's, like I said, straight return on investment, business talk, all that stuff. Um, I think it was a great decision by the Mets. But past the big two with Verlander and Scherzer, there's a lot of question marks for the Mets in their rotation. And I still think, Jeff, that they're missing that one impact bat. And we've been talking about it, you and I, since last
Hmm.
season. They need that impact bat. They have Lindor, they have Alonso, sure, but they need someone else in there that can really hit the ball to all fields. And they don't have that. They didn't address that this offseason. Maybe they do at the deadline, you would hope. But until further notice, I don't think they have a serious run at the division until they can get that impact bat and maybe add another pitcher or so. But like I said, we'll see at the middle of the season how things look. For the Dodgers, I didn't pick them to win the West because offensively, I don't have any concerns with the Dodgers. They have Mookie Betts, they have Freddie Freeman. They're still a great offensive club, but their pitching is very concerning to me. Their their pitching is based on I hope this guy stays healthy and I hope this guy stays consistent. And they're relying on those two things to work in order to have a great season from their pitching staff. And that's not something that today I can say I'm confident in and trust that's going to happen for the Dodgers. So I think they're still going to be a very good team. Obviously, I still have them in the playoffs. Maybe they get 90 plus wins, I'm sure. But as far as winning that division, I don't have them winning this year. And then the Phillies, unfortunately, they lose Hoskins to, again, a non contact injury. Happens, like I said, we said earlier, happens in the World Baseball Classic, can happen in spring training, can happen walking out the shower, which we've seen players get hurt as well. So that's going to be a huge loss. He's kind of like their heart and soul of that team. So I'm sure that's going to be a big void left in the clubhouse. But I think, when you add America's shortstop and Trey Turner to a team that was already really good and made that postseason run last year, you're going to get Harper back at some point. There are reports he's not going to be on the 60-day IL, which is huge news, which means he won't be out as long as people expect. I think the Phillies are good enough with their rotation to really to stay consistent at least, or be in the hunt for when Harper gets back to make that second half, spark and make a run at the playoffs. So that's why I have him at the wild card team there. So those are my three
Okay.
wild cards for the National League.
Okay. So real quickly on the Mets, I agree with you. The Mets didn't add that impact bat. Almost did with Correa, obviously,
Yeah,
but we know what happened with that. So they don't have that impact bat. I think they're going to need someone to step up internally, though, right?
yeah.
And I think they're going to need to stay healthy. I do think that a part of the Mets season last year that was kind of underrated and how it affected them was Sterling Marte missing time at the end of the year after he got hit in the hand
Mhm.
against the Pittsburgh Pirates, because he was out for a good stretch of time and their offense kind of sputtered on and off from that point. And so I think, them staying healthy and Marte being healthy will be a key. I also think too, one of the things I'm going to keep my eye on is Omar Narvaez, the new catcher that they got from Milwaukee,
Yeah, I like him.
who's an upgrade offensively, obviously, from McCann, who was, I mean, every time that guy came to the plate, I was so frustrated. He was so inept offensively for the Mets. I'm not saying he's going to be a difference maker, but I do think he won't be the automatic out
Yeah,
that McCann was, and I think that may help. But I also agree with you that their rotation, especially with the injury to Quintana, is a concern, right? Is a concern because they were pretty deep. Taiwan Walker as a fourth, starter last year was pretty good for them. You know what I mean? And you had Chris Bassett in there doing his thing, and so forth. So yeah, I think it's a concern. And then obviously the biggest concern from a pitching standpoint is the loss of Edwin Diaz.
yeah,
Right. I mean, that's the biggest thing. So I think the Mets just really have a lot of issues, a lot of talent still, but they're going to have to fight and scramble. You mentioned the Dodgers and not being concerned about their offense, but you also mentioned that Trey Turner is now with the Phillies. And I think him not being on the Dodgers is going to hurt them offensively, obviously. And then with Gavin Lux also being gone for the whole season,
Mhm.
and Muncy last year was not at his best, offensively. And we saw what happened to the Dodgers in the postseason. They were pitched to, right, and shut
Yeah.
down. I don't know if I'm sold on the Dodgers offensively, really. You know what I mean? Good team, yes, but I think we might start to have seen the beginning of the end of the Dodgers dynasty, such as it was. And then lastly, the last thing I will say on the Phillies is look, I anything Philadelphia, I don't root for. Okay. I don't even root for the sun to come up in Philly. All right. So uh, so 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 I'm not rooting for them at all. But I do hear you on Hoskins. That to me, I feel for Hoskins
Yeah.
because he is a key part of that team, as you said. But I feel for him because he was an impending free agent, and so to have this kind of
Yeah.
injury
That
at this
too.
particular time just really stinks. You know what I mean? You want to see a good player cash in, and he's going to have to. It'll be a year delayed for him before he can really cash in. So from that standpoint, I feel for a Philadelphia Philly, but that's it. I have nothing else to say, and we'll see if they make it. But I got it down here: Mets, Dodgers, Phillies. Now, if there was one team who is not part of your top three, but who could sneak in as a wild card, who would that be?
I would say it's either between the Brewers, who somehow always are good, especially towards the end of the season, and the other team that I think may, I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I'm interested in seeing how the Diamondbacks perform this year. They have some interesting players, some good young players. They've mixed in some veterans, obviously with the trade with the Blue Jays. Um, I'm interested to see how they pan out. I don't think they'll make any noise in the West. They're in a very tough division. I don't think the Padres and Dodgers aren't going to mess around with them. But I'm interested to see how the D-backs do. But if there's one team that might sneak in, I'd probably say Milwaukee is the one.
Okay. All right. So now what? Wild cards in the American League?
Yeah, let's do it. So for
Okay.
these three, I have Toronto, Seattle, and the Minnesota Twins. Um, so we'll start with the Twins. So I was a little conflicted about this because I originally had Tampa Bay as one of the wild card teams, and and that's strictly out of respect for what the Rays are able to do year in and year out, whether it's through adversity with injuries or not having enough pitch or something. But they somehow find a way to make it, and I think they have a pretty good rotation. They'll be a good team, but I think they'll fall just short of the playoffs, and that's where the Twins come in. I like some of the moves the Twins made. Obviously, they bring back Correa out of the blue almost after all the back and forth with his contracts. The Joey Gallo signing. Now, as a Yankee fan, you remember Joey Gallo did not do well, but with the shift ban in place, I'm sure teams will still find a way to get creative and shift and things like that. But I think he's going to see his offensive numbers rise again and build that confidence again. And I think we're going to see a little bit of more Texas Joey Gallo as opposed to Yankees Dodgers Joey Gallo. And I think that's going to help the Twins offensively. He's still a really good defender, I would say, in the outfield, and that's going to help the Twins. And I think their rotation is pretty good. The addition of Pablo Lopez, I think, was A plus. I would have loved to see him on the Yankees, to be honest. It was one guy I was hoping the Yankees would trade for, but ultimately the Twins get him, and he's a solid starter. I think underrated around the league, if I have to say. But I like the Twins in that regard to make the playoffs. With Seattle, they're here. They've arrived. They're no longer that like flirting with success kind of team. They're here. They made the playoffs already. Now it's a matter of continuing that. And I think they added some pieces with Teoscar Hernandez, who I think him with J Rod, it's going to be a great dynamic. They add to that offense. They get a full year of Luis Castillo. Robbie Ray as their number two now, so less pressure on him, and a full year of Luis Castillo. I'm excited to see how that goes, how that tandem works out. And I think this is the Mariners' chance to continue that consistency. They have the young core in place, and now they just have to continue to build with it. And I think they made the moves to do so. And then with Toronto, they're a team that has been an offensive powerhouse over the last couple of years, and they sacrificed some of that offense for defense, and that's based on the moves they made. So signing a guy like Kevin Kiermaier to play center field, they traded for Varsho from the Diamondbacks, who a pretty decent bat as well, but also I think he plays some pretty good defense. Very versatile player, can play catcher, outfield, all that stuff. They're very top heavy lineup now with those adjustments and those trades and those moves they made. So you have to hope that guys like Vlad and all those other guys can stay healthy. Bo Bichette can stay healthy and produce at the level that you're expecting them to produce. Because if they don't, I can very quickly see Toronto fading as we get later into the season. Their pitching stats is pretty good. You want to see a bounce back from Barrios. He had a very bad season last year, but they had Chris Bassett, who another guy who I think is underrated. He's a pretty solid starter, good number three, number four starter. So that's why I have Toronto in there making the playoffs as the wild card team.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, and obviously, you're going to turn to the division winners in a second. Um, but I do think it's interesting that Tampa Bay didn't make it, so I can only assume that Tampa Bay is not making the postseason, according
Yeah.
to you, because there's no way on God's green earth you're picking them to win a division over your Yankees. So that's like spoiler alert, not. You know what I mean? So, but but yeah, I think I look Seattle to me. You're right. I think they're poised to continue to be there. But obviously, all these teams have to produce. But I think
Yeah.
Seattle definitely is there to do that. I wonder what you talked about Pablo Lopez coming over to the Twins, and I agree with you that that's a good move. but they also gave up some good talent in Luis Arias, right? The
They did.
AL batting champion last year and a career 300 hitter who's just overall a very good hitter, very versatile. He's played a lot of he's played around, defensively on the field. Um, he gives you some good defense as well. So, they did lose that, but and it remains to be seen, right? You don't just lose a batting champion and go, "Oh, we're fine." You know what I'm saying? You just don't.
Yeah.
And he's a career 300 hitter, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And then with Toronto, I think you're right. I mean, over especially 2 years ago, right? They would bludgeon you,
Mhm.
right, with their offense. Last year, they weren't as good. It was to be expected because, Vlad and Teoscar weren't going to have those like otherworldly years that they had 2 years ago. And then Springer was in and out of the lineup and things of that sort. So their offense wasn't clicking as it was 2 years ago. And now, as you said, they've kind of made some other moves, get some defense and some defensive versatility with Kiermaier and Varsho. Um, and so their offense is not going to be the same. And so to me, that's the biggest question mark of your three in my mind. Will Toronto have enough offensively to do it? I'm not saying they don't, but it's going to be interesting to see how they win games, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not going to win games because they're going to slug you to death. And so that'll be interesting. But you're right, Barrios has to bounce back. So that's interesting. So, same question I asked you in the National League. If there's the one team who you don't have in your top three, who you say, hey, they may be able to sneak in as a wild card in the American League, which team would that be?
I would probably go Tampa as my number one. Just kind of the conversation I had earlier about Tampa. They're a team that you have to respect them regardless of who they put out on the field because everyone they put out can produce and somehow come up in a big way. But if not counting Tampa, I would probably say, believe it or not, just the Rangers because they're a very interesting team that I'm going to be watching very closely because they may be one of those dark horse teams that slides into that last wild card spot late into the season. Because if they can stay healthy, and that's the biggest if, because obviously they have DeGrom, and that's his big thing. It's if you're healthy, he's the best pitcher in baseball. If he can stay healthy, I think they have a chance to make it as a wild card team.
Okay. I'm going to pass just in the interest of time over DeGrom being the best pitcher in baseball if he's healthy because I think that's more of him living off his resume, and I think it's time out for that because I
Mm,
just saw him with the Mets last year, and I saw him at the end of the season, and he couldn't make it through the fifth inning too many times,
yeah,
and he was getting tagged quite a bit. Listen, the numbers are still eye popping. They really are. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They really are. Even with his abbreviated contribution over the last 2 years, when you put them together but sometimes that can just be misleading. But um, we'll see what happens with Texas. We'll see. But let's go on to the division winners. Okay, so might as well start in the National League so that you can, you know, for obvious reasons, save the
all right.
American League for last. But okay, so who are the division winners in the National League?
So for the NL East, I got the Braves. I don't think there's a surprise there. I think just top to bottom, they're the best team in that division. They're deep. They're full of talent up and down that roster. There wasn't much thought into picking the Braves, honestly, to win the division. I just think they're the better team, point blank. With the NL Central, I have St. Louis, your favorite team.
Ugh,
A model of consistency, man.
I
I
know.
they just that's who they are. They're another team and another organization who just continues to have good talent up and down that roster. On paper, they have potential all stars at every single position, especially on first and third with those two potential MVPs year in and year out. So again, not too much thought put into this one. I just think the Cardinals again are the better team in that division. And in the NL West, the San Diego Padres. I think this is their year. Injuries, obviously notwithstanding, I think they're the best team in that division on paper. But obviously, games are played on the field, so we will see how they perform on the field. I like their rotation; it's a very solid rotation. I think the addition of Bogarts was a good one. The investment was huge, but that left side of the infield now with Machado, who's maybe the top three third baseman, top two maybe in the entire league, along with Xander Bogaerts at short, allows you to move Tatis into the outfield. He's extremely athletic, as we know, with Tatis. But two moves that I like that the Padres made as well is bringing in Matt Carpenter, who's just a veteran presence, a veteran hitter. But the other one that I liked the most was Nelson Cruz. And it's not because Nelson Cruz is going to hit 45 home runs anymore, but I think he was brought in almost as a mentor for Tatis, especially with the stuff he's been going through and kind of the positions he's put himself into the last couple of years. So I think the addition of Nelson Cruz in that clubhouse as a clubhouse presence is going to help Tatis keep his mind on the field and not focus around all the stuff that's going on off the field.
Yeah, look, I can't argue with any of your selections here. I think San Diego, just talent wise, is the top team in the West, and I think they're going to beat out the Dodgers. St. Louis, you know how I feel about St. Louis, but I think in that division they are the best team, and so yeah, I think they should come away with the Central Crown. Atlanta, same thing. I think of the three teams, the other two being the Mets and the Phillies. I think Atlanta has the most talent, but it's interesting that all three teams have injury problems.
Yeah,
The Mets, with Diaz being gone for the year, Quintana being gone for probably half the year, if not a little bit more severe. Hoskins being gone for the whole year, very, that's a severe one. But Kyle Wright is I think is starting the season hurt for um for Atlanta, and Iglesias
hmm
is starting hurt as well. Look, they do have Atlanta. They do have a lot of options in the bullpen, so I think they'll turn to those options. But losing Kyle Wright, you don't know how long it's going to be. And then also with Iglesias, it's one thing to be the eighth inning guy, seventh inning guy, but to be the ninth inning guy again, where he had some up and down performances, I don't think he's a sure bet in that slot either. So I think of your three, Atlanta is probably the one that will have to fight the hardest because I think the division is more competitive,
yeah,
right? With the Mets and the Phillies there. And I think Atlanta, let's see what Spencer Strider does in his sophomore season. Let's see what Michael Harris, does in his sophomore season. Let's see how they overcome the departure of Dansby Swanson, who was a key part of that team last year and over the past four seasons. You know what I mean? So I think the Braves still have some question marks.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so, but I do believe, yeah, I can see picking them over the Mets and the Phillies, but I think Atlanta has some challenges ahead of them as well. Um, okay, so let's move to the National League. I mean, to the American League. And
Yeah.
who do you have there?
All right. So we'll start with the AL West. The Astros. I'm sick of them, but they
Your
man,
favorite team.
God.
That's your favorite team.
I am so sick of the Astros, man. But they are, listen, they lose star players and somehow they get a star player. They just call up a star player, and Jeremy Pena is the latest example of that. Obviously, Altuve is out with the thumb injury for getting hit in the World Baseball Classic. But I don't expect them to lose much ground in that regard. They kind of started off the gate, I believe, struggling last season. Everyone was worrying about that. I picked them to be a wild card team last season, and they shut me up. So I'm done. I'm done picking against them, Jeff. I'm just done. The Astros are the team to beat in all of baseball until further notice. They're going to take that division and run with it. With the AL Central, I picked the Guardians. I don't think they were a fluke last year. They have a really good rotation. I love Tristan McKenzie is a guy that I don't think enough people talk about, and I know you and I touched on him last season as well as a guy that we both like to watch pitch. And I hope that he continues to be a really good starter. I think he has ace potential if he gets everything together and does what we know he can do. Um, and I think the addition of Josh Bell was a good one. It adds some pop into that lineup that didn't have a lot of power to begin with. So he can bring them that potential of 25, 30 home runs, maybe even more, give them more opportunities to come along with all those young guys already in the lineup. So I have them winning the Central Division. And then no surprise here, I'm going with the New York Yankees. I picked against them last year. I had the Blue Jays winning last year. So I have the Yankees winning this year. Despite the headaches and the pain that they caused me and the panic attacks they made me go through last season, they came off, hot start, one of the best teams in baseball to start the first half. Second half, they were playing about 500 ball the rest of the way, which is kind of where those daily panic attacks came in for me. A lot of night sweats, sleepless nights. Man, it's tough being a Yankee fan these days. It's not like the 90s. But I think going into the offseason, they had question marks whether Judge was going to be back. Obviously, he signed up to be a Yankee for life, which is great. I think the addition of Rodon was much needed because Garrett Cole is your ace. He's your horse. He's giving you 200 innings. But we needed someone who can be reliable as a number two and a for sure number two. And I think Rodon fits that bill. And I know he's hurt to start the season. And hopefully it's nothing that extends throughout the season. But I think it was the perfect addition to have. And not to mention, I'm excited to see their new shortstop, Anthony Volpe, number one prospect for the team. I think the number 5 prospect in all of baseball or something like that. Got the call yesterday that he was going to be the opening day shortstop for the Yankees and hopefully long-term shortstop as well. So I'm excited to see what the Yankees are going to bring. I'm excited to see the influx of youth that they're putting into their roster, which is something that's almost new for Yankee fans because we don't see that often. So I'm excited for the Yankees, man. They're going to give me pain. They're going to make me suffer. But I think the Yankees are overall the best team in that division.
Again, I think the division choices are hard to argue with. I think Houston's the class of the West. Seattle, is a good team. I
Yeah.
just think, look, Houston added Jose Abreu, bro.
Yeah, they casually added him.
Right. Nobody's really
Replacing Chris.
saying much
Yeah,
about that.
it's like
You know what I mean?
that's a huge addition, man.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Man.
it is. So, talking about the rich getting richer.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think Cleveland is just, again, I think the Central in both divisions are the weakest in
Yeah,
baseball,
I agree.
in both leagues, I mean. But I think Cleveland, should be viewed as the favorite there. And then I do think the Yankees, should prevail in the East. The one thing I wonder about the Yankees is this. Volpe, it's going to be interesting because he's a young kid. So how does he, adapt to the bright lights of New York? Especially when he hits, the rough patch, and he will.
Yep.
Right? We don't know if he starts the season that way, it comes at the end of the season, or somewhere in between, and how many rough patches there will be. But there will be some rough patches, so it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that. I do agree that Rodon's a key piece for the Yankees. The one thing I do wonder though is Judge, which sounds strange. And the only thing I wonder about is he's not. Chances are very very high he's not going to have a season like he had last season. I think we all can agree with that, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to
100%.
be better than he was last season. So what does that mean for the Yankees overall? Because you and I both know there were times when Aaron Judge carried that team on his back.
Yeah, especially
And
against we saw in the Astros series, not the playoffs,
yes,
but in the regular season, it
yes,
was Judge.
yeah. Yeah, that 4-game set at at Yankee
Yeah.
Stadium, the Astros won 2 and Judge won 2.
Yep.
Um, but, I just wonder, where is his fall off going to be? Now, he could still be excellent with the decline, right? Because his season was so great last year. But where does he settle? You know what I mean? What are his numbers going to be, and how will that impact the Yankees offensively? That's the one question I have. In addition to how does Volpe pan out in the end? But those are the types of things that you just have to let the season unfold,
Yeah.
um, and we'll see how it plays out. But all right. Well, there you have it. This is March 27th, 3 days before opening day. And Rob Duran has put in his predictions. If you missed them in the NL, the wild card, the Mets, Dodgers, and Phillies. In the American League, Toronto, Seattle, and Minnesota. For the division winners, NL, the Atlanta Braves, St. Louis Cardinals, and the San Diego Padres. And in the American League, Houston, the Cleveland Guardians, and of course, his New York Yankees. Okay. Well, I got it down in pen. I'm going to now put this in the safe spot for safekeeping. I think it might make sense to revisit this at the All-Star break, just
Absolutely.
to see
Yep.
if any adjustments need to be made based on how the season has played out to that point.
Yeah, that's a great idea because baseball will baseball at some point in this season, and we may see some crazy surprises. You never know.
That's right. I mean, Texas could be one of those teams. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here. One of the things I do want to sort of preview for next time, one of the things I do want to talk about as it relates to baseball are the rule changes.
Mm,
The bigger bases, the pitch clock, and so forth. The shift, right? The banning of the shift. Obviously, that's something that's going to all of those things are going to be interesting to see how all three of those play out and the effect that it has on the game. So we'll talk about that next time, and obviously as the season goes on. But we're gonna wrap it up right here, brother. So good to get um, back in the saddle and to talk some sports with you. And enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed your predictions, and looking forward to doing this again next time.
absolutely, man. Can't wait for opening day. Let's go.
Opening day. You're pushing for it to be a holiday.
I am. I'm gonna start the petition soon.
There you go. Not only do you know sports, but you're a social activist to boot. All right, brother. I will catch you next time. You be good.
Take care, man.
All right.